A few weeks ago, I put out a video where I argued that sorcerers were the best blasters in all of D&D. But guess what? I was wrong. The correct answer is Bard. Yeah, that's right. And today, we're going to build the best bardic blaster you have ever seen. In fact, a little spoiler warning here, eventually, at least, this build hits harder than any other build that I've ever done in the history of this channel. And it's not even close. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody. So here at D4, each week I take a deep dive into character builds for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them. I like to theory craft about them. Not so that I can tell you the definitive right way to play this character or best way or whatever, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both really fun, but also really powerful to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you just really like theory crafting, or if you are just looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong. Yes, right here in my house. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for watching. My name's Colby. So yeah, last month I did a video called The Master Blaster. Just check it out right up there if you haven't seen it. That was trying to figure out how much AoE, area of effect, multi-target, right, damage we could do every round over a single combat encounter if we let ourselves blow all of our spell slots along the way. The result ended up doing more AoE damage per round than any build I've ever done. Not surprisingly, I suppose. As soon as I finished writing the script for that one, the thing that went to the very top of my to-do list, of course, was, okay, how about single target damage? Naturally. Because, sure, AoE is great, but as we often talk about here, sometimes doing all your damage to a single target is a better tactical decision, right, than doing more total damage but to multiple enemies, yeah? Especially if the single target damage you do ends up preventing an enemy from taking their turn if they otherwise would have, if subjected to, say, a fireball or something, right? And while it's true that I've done more single target damage per round builds than any other kind of character build in the 5 years that I've been running this channel now, holy cow, 5 years. That's crazy. And yes, I've used spells on a ton of them, well over half, I'm sure. I've never done a single target damage blaster build that tried to see what would happen if we used a spell slot every single round. Anytime I've used spell slots for damage, it's always been considered a burst or nova damage build, or if I was doing what I would call a sustained damage build anyways, just like one combat encounter a day, right? Then it would only be a single spell used for concentration, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong there if you know about it. But yes, that changes now since I'm calculating damage over a 4-round combat encounter, and yeah, that change to the way that I'm calculating damage is, unsurprisingly, I suppose, having a major impact on numbers. But before we get into the build itself, I wanted to talk about Conjure Minor Elementals. For those who don't know, when this spell was updated for the 2024 Player's Handbook a year ago, it kind of got, well, blasted by me and several others in the community for being really overpowered. It added 2d8 to all attacks and would scale by 2d8 more for every level you upcast it. This would lead to some really preposterous damage with higher spell slots, especially as I've demonstrated in a couple of builds. First, the Valor Bard that you can find right up there, and then later the 2024 Bladesinger, which is here. Ever since then, I've largely been avoiding using the spell in builds because I knew that most tables were either homebrewing it or just outright banning it at their tables. And it was just busted. Okay, actually, I did actually use it one other time. It was on my Moon Druid build, but I don't think that was too egregious because those Moon Druids were only getting 2 attacks every round, so they weren't, really like exploiting the damage increase. But thankfully, Wizards of the Coast saw the error of their ways with this one and ended up fixing the spell in an errata that they released a few months ago. So now the spell only scales by 1d8 for every level you upcast it, meaning that as a level 9 spell, it only adds 7d8 damage per hit instead of 12d8 damage per hit. Hang on a minute, you might be saying. 7d8 damage is still busted. Well, let's talk about it. So the thing we need to keep in mind with Conjure Minor Elementals is that it takes an action to cast. That is potentially really painful. Spirit Shroud, the other D&D spell that's most like it, starts at 1d8 per hit and only scales by a d8 every 2 levels you upcast it, meaning that at level 9 it's only doing 4d8 per hit. Just a little more than half the damage of Conjure Minor Elementals. But it only takes a bonus action to cast. So what's better? Using your action to buff yourself, potentially not even making any extra damage attacks on the round that you cast it, right? Allowing enemies to stay alive longer and get their turns, etc. Maybe even damage us and cause us to lose concentration on the thing before we even get to use it, right? Or just use a bonus action, in the case of Spirit Shroud, to get our buff going and then still make some attacks on that same turn with it, plus hopefully more on subsequent rounds. That is obviously going to depend on how long the combat encounter lasts and how many attacks you can actually get off with the buff, etc., etc. But I appreciate that it's a thing where sometimes one will be better and sometimes another will be. But in the end, yeah, I think we're fine to start using Conjure Minor Elementals in builds again now. 7d8 per hit is a lot of damage, but I mean, a 9th level spell slot? You could be turning yourself into a dragon, or casting Meteor Swarm, or heck, Wish, right? Who's really going to use a 9th level spell for a little more damage per hit? I mean, okay, to be fair, if we can find a way to get a lot of attacks on our turn, and we can keep concentration so that we're making lots of attacks every round, yeah, it just might be worth it. But whether it is or not, we're going to find out how much damage we could do if we went all out with it, so let's go for it. I proudly present D&D episode number 221, The Blazing Bard, the Song of Fire, just fire, no ice, the Scorching Ray gun, the Bombardier, the Bartillery Unit, Inspire the Fire, the Bardic Blaster, the Barbecue. That one might be my favorite, actually. Thanks as always to the awesome recommendations from the Discord server. I think today I'm going to keep it a little straightforward and just go with the Pyromancer. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for the build this week. He does this every week. If you'd be interested in checking out the other art that he creates, or potentially even trying to commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I'll put links in the video description as always on how to do so. And first, some questions for you, dear viewer. Do you want to try out a new TTRPG for free? Also, do you ever wish that you had an RPG that you could play by yourself, or like maybe with just one other friend? Do you like things that are cozy? Do you like attention to detail in your games, with a bit maybe of an extra focus on the natural world? Because if any of those things are true, you are going to love the sponsor for today's video, Son of Oak Gaming, and their new TTRPG, Legend in the Mist. So here's the thing. Legend in the Mist has a free graphic novel with gorgeous artwork, by the way, that also doubles as a kind of choose-your-own-adventure that teaches you how to play the game while you read it. It's frankly ingenious. I played it myself. Yes, all by myself. I had a lot of fun with it, actually, and by the time I was done, I felt like I had a pretty good handle on how to play the game and was ready to jump into a larger adventure of my own. It was awesome. But what is Legend of the Mist, you may be asking? They had a Kickstarter last year. They actually sponsored a video on this channel during it, and they totally destroyed their funding goal. They're just about ready now to ship the physical books, but you can get the PDFs for it today. And if you pre-order the physical books, you'll get the PDFs for free. Legend in the Mist is a fantasy TTRPG that you can play in any setting, including your favorite settings from books, movies, and other TTRPGs, although it does have its own sort of default rustic fantasy setting, as it's called. Think of that as like a nostalgic, dark subgenre of fantasy inspired by legends and folktales, with emphasis here on traveling, crafting, herbalism, cooking, foraging, hunting, and camping, though there's plenty of action too. It is a 2d6 system, so every single action is resolved with just a 2d6 roll, modified by your character's like personality, traits, and gear. If you succeed, you can choose the effects of your action, like dealing damage, healing, discovering clues, convincing an NPC, but you can also gain consequences, which the narrator, the DM, uses to deliver attacks from adversaries, side effects, loss of tools or weapons, or like negative story developments. And if you like things a little more crunchy, they've got an accessory called the Action Grimoire, which is also available now, with hundreds of suggestions for actions, their effects, and their consequences. The core book here includes full support for both solo and co-op mode, so you can play on your own or in a group without a dedicated narrator if you want, which is kind of awesome. So here's what I think you should do. Go to the URL that I've linked in the video description and the pinned comment and download the free graphic novel demo and play the adventure. See if you like it. And when you realize that you do, get the PDFs or pre-order the books and get the PDFs for free so that you can start playing. I'm confident that you will be glad that you did. So huge thanks to Son of Oak Gaming. Appreciate the support. Super excited to see the physical books here because they look really awesome. Okay, let's jump into the build. All right, at level 1 for our starting class, yes, I was sorely tempted to start with a level in Sorcerer here for Constitution saving throw proficiency, maybe even Artificer. I think if I were playing this character in game, I just might do one of those two things, more on that later, but our level 6 damage report is gonna look a lot better if we just beeline Bard for a while. So in the name of the spreadsheet, that's what we're going to do. And yeah, maybe a note on that here. This build is going to end up doing some really insane single target blasting damage, but it will take a minute to get going. These first few levels, and even at level 6, will be a decent blaster, but we're not going to blow the roof off of anything. We've got to lay our foundation a bit. But the good news, yeah, we're a bard, which means we are one of the best support and utility characters in game. So the fact that our damage will only be good at first is not something I feel bad about at all. As for our species, I want to go elf for the usual reasons. And that reason is because I love Legolas. Okay, fine. It's for elven accuracy, but if you can't use older content or you don't want to be an elf, that's fine. Anything will work great here. And we actually aren't going to be getting elven accuracy until much later. So if you're not playing the character after like level 10, then I'd especially encourage you to go a different route, especially if you want to. Fire Goliath would add some nice damage and be on point thematically, I think, as we'll see. But as for our background, as always I say, take an old one and customize it or make a custom background if you can, but if not, Merchant will work fine since it has the ability score increases I want and one of the origin feats that I'd like to have, Lucky, right? I suppose I'd actually probably prefer Magic Initiate Wizard here if I were starting Bard anyway, so that I could get the shield spell, among other things. If we didn't start Sorcerer, right, having shield would be really nice to help improve our survivability. But Lucky is still great. It gives us a number of luck points equal to our proficiency bonus that we can use per long rest to give ourselves advantage on any D20 test, or to give an enemy disadvantage on their attack against us. Always useful. Other great options, though, would be, Musician, Alert, but the backgrounds that give those feats also don't give the right ability score increases, so I'd probably only do one of those if we could, in fact, take an older custom background, right? Speaking of ability score increases, as always, I assume that we're going the point buy method and say, let's take a 15 charisma and a +2 there, a 15 constitution and a +1, and then a 14 dexterity. And having a 16 constitution feels pretty nice, both for saving throw and survivability purposes. As for starting equipment, we don't need much. Bards have light armor proficiency at least, so sure, grab some studded leather, but alas, we have no shield proficiency. We'll also want to grab a light crossbow. More on why in a sec. As a bard, at level 1, we get Bardic Inspiration, of course, which says that charisma modifier times per day, we can use a bonus action to inspire our allies with word or song, letting them, anytime in the next hour, use our Bardic Inspiration die, a d6 for now, to add to any failed d20 test that they make. It's so good. Infinitely useful. We also get spells, of course, and first up, we're gonna want True Strike, since when we cast it, we make a weapon attack too, and yes, it can be a ranged weapon, hence the light crossbow, which is a simple weapon, and thus we have proficiency with it. The attack would use our spellcasting modifier to hit and damage, though, meaning we would do a d8 +3 right now, and that's better damage than any other cantrip we could be casting, and will remain so for the first little while. But I would also grab Vicious Mockery so that you can insult and damage and debuff enemies, the perfect bard spell, plus Blade Ward. Actually, I think I might even concentrate on Blade Ward for these first levels, since it just automatically causes an attacker to reduce their attacks against you by a d4 so long as you hold on to concentration. That's like a 2.5 increase to our AC, right? Not bad. But you could also concentrate on Bane, if you had the spell slot to cast it, right? Which is a lot stronger. If the up to 3 enemies fail their charisma save against it, they reduce all of their attacks and saving throws by a d4. So good. Otherwise, yeah, I'd grab Dissonant Whispers to do damage and force an enemy to flee, a nice unique bard spell. Cure Wounds or Healing Word for a nice heal option, maybe both, honestly. Sleep and or Hideous Laughter are great for control, and of course there's always Silvery Barbs. I love it. You know who else I love? My channel members and patrons. Oh, quick shout out. You guys are the best. I could not do what I do without you. Thank you so much for making this possible and supporting me. If you're not a member or a patron, I'd love it if you'd consider becoming one. There's a button down there that says join. If you click on it or go to the Patreon link in the video description, you can find out what that entails. I give all of my membership perks to anyone who signs up at just the silver level or higher, and ask that you pay what you think it's worth or what you feel you can afford. Those perks include access to the library of write-ups that I do for all of my builds to help you recreate it yourself a little more easily, access to the community Discord server, and even access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we do. If you can't or don't want to become a member like this, that's fine. I appreciate you just being here, watching, liking, subscribing. Those are also great ways to support the channel, so thanks. At level 2, we get expertise. This lets us, double our proficiency bonus with 2 skills that we are proficient in, and I'm just gonna say pick your favorite here, but I mean, on a bard, I think I'm going persuasion and performance, even though perception might be the smarter choice. The people must be entertained. We also get Jack of all trades, which just adds half of our proficiency bonus to any ability check that we make that uses a skill we're not proficient in. No, sorry, this doesn't work on initiative rolls anymore, so please stop saying that it does. Or actually, if you want, that's fine. Engagement is engagement. This is just, a nice little utility buff. At level 3, we get our bard subclass, our college, right? And we are going with, did you guess? That's right, the Lore Bard, the subclass who, I would argue, has the best spell list of any class or subclass in the entire game. Once you hit level 6, at least. Better than wizards, better than even Divine Soul sorcerers. Lore Bards dominate for spell options, and it really kind of makes them the most diverse caster in game, I think, right? You could make an argument otherwise, but the first support build I ever did that I claimed was the best support ever was a Lore Bard. Check it out up there if you want to go in the Wayback Machine. And now here I am calling them the best blaster too. That's a big claim. We'll see if you agree. For now, Lore Bards get bonus proficiencies, 3 of them. Go ahead and PYF there, pick your favorites. We're a pretty awesome skill monkey now, especially. But then we also get Cutting Words, which says that when an enemy succeeds on an attack or ability check or makes a damage roll, we can use our reaction and a bardic inspiration to reduce that roll by our inspiration die. It's pretty strong. Makes us not only lore masters, but the best hurler of insults in D&D as well. As for second level spells that we get here, of course there are a ton that I would love to have. Aid and Lesser Restoration for support purposes to heal and raise max hit points, and then, cure some nasty conditions with Lesser Restoration. Blindness, Deafness is a great way to really debuff enemy attackers. Invisibility is always nice for utility. Hold Person is insanely potent single target control, as long as they're humanoids, as is Suggestion. Mirror Image is great for defense. Good luck choosing. At level 4, we get a general feat, and we gotta take Warcaster, I think. Holding on to concentration is going to be so important for our damage, or sure, our control if we decide to go that route. And getting advantage on concentration checks from Warcaster is just really clutch. Plus it raises our charisma to 18, it's a half feat now. Plus it lets us cast a spell as an opportunity attack, if need be. It's just really, really good. At level 5, we get Font of Inspiration, which causes our bardic inspirations to reset on a short rest now, and that's huge for those of us having more than one combat encounter per day anyways. That bardic inspiration die bumps up to a d8 now too, making it even more potent. And then we get the almighty 3rd level spells, and I want Catnap for a 10-minute short rest, Tiny Hut for incredible protection during our rests. Dispel Magic is always useful to get rid of nasty spell effects. And then there's the incredible control spells, right? Fear to cause enemies to be frightened, drop what they're holding and flee. Hypnotic Pattern to just incapacitate a bunch of them instead. Or my favorite of all, actually, slow to reduce move speed, lower AC and dexterity saves, prohibit reactions, limit attacks, and even potentially disrupt spellcasting. It is so dang good, both for offense and defense. Don't forget, at this level, our cantrip damage increases. For True Strike, that means it adds an extra d6 of damage to the attack. But at level 6, we can finally start to become a real blaster, if we want it, because lore bards get magical discoveries, which is basically magical secrets 4 levels early. This feature gives us 2 free spells from the bard, cleric, druid, or yes, wizard spell lists. Tells us they count as bard spells, and also, from now on, whenever we gain a bard level, we can replace one of those 2 spells with a different spell from one of those lists. So, which spells should we take? Well, call me crazy, but if we really wanted to get into blasting, we would go with Scorching Ray and Spirit Shroud. Scorching Ray is a 2nd level spell that fires 3 rays of fire plus 1 more ray for every level that we upcast it. Each of them does 2d6 fire damage, and we can attack whoever we want with them. All 3 attacks at a single target, or we can split them up between multiple. I appreciate that the damage itself isn't necessarily anything to write home about. It's decent, but many would argue that it's not really worth the spell slot, especially not a higher level spell slot. But if we have a nice way to add damage to every attack we make, it gets a lot better. Thus, Spirit Shroud. This spell requires concentration, costs a bonus action to cast, as I mentioned at the beginning, and then says that for the next minute, every attack we make against enemies within 10 feet of us. I appreciate that's a pretty small area. We're kind of almost in melee range here. Or actually in melee range if the enemy has reach, right? But all of those attacks are going to do an extra d8 of cold, radiant, or necrotic damage, our choice when we cast the spell. Also, enemies who start their turn within 10 feet of us have their speed reduced by 10 feet until our next turn. Okay, so at level 6, it is time for our first damage report. What does combat look like for us right now? It's pretty simple. On round 1, we cast Spirit Shroud with our bonus action and use our action to True Strike our target for what would be 2d8 plus 1d6 plus 4 if it hits. It's not horrible. On subsequent rounds, though, we would just throw out the highest level Scorching Ray that we have. We've got 2 more 3rd level spell slots, so that would be, rounds 2 and 3 for 4 rays, and then 1 2nd level spell slot on round 4 for 3 rays. Each hit would add a d8 of damage from Spirit Shroud, meaning that on rounds 2 and 3 at least, we'd potentially be doing 4d8 plus 8d6 damage to a single target. It's not bad at all. Plus, on most rounds, we've got our bonus action available for Bardic Inspiration, or something else if need be, which I appreciate. But if we averaged this all over a 4-round combat encounter, then against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 34 damage per round on average, and against a 15 AC, it would be 25 DPR. And like I said, that's good, not great. Compared to other DPR builds I've done to date, that's like middle of tier 3, and we're blowing a lot of resources to get there. Wait, I thought you said bards were the best blasters in D&D. Yeah, I did, but I also said it takes us a minute to get there. Patience, grasshopper. At this level, you would definitely be a lot better off as a pure draconic sorcerer, for example. But that is all going to change very soon. Because at level 7, bards get counter charm. That's not the reason, though it's nice. It lets us use our reaction to allow ourselves or an ally who fails a save against being charmed or frightened to re-roll the save, this time with advantage. Pretty cool. But more importantly, for our purposes, we get 4th level spells. And while Sure Dimension Door, Greater Invisibility, Polymorph, and more are all great options, as a lore bard, we get access to Conjure Minor Elementals, and that is huge. So replace Spirit Shroud with this now, and get ready for some big gains. As a quick recap, Conjure Minor Elementals is cast as an action. It requires concentration, and says that while it's active, and the duration here is 10 minutes, which is much appreciated actually. Any enemies within 15 feet, also much appreciated, take an extra 2d8 damage from each successful attack we make against them, and that damage can be acid, cold, fire, or lightning, which we get to choose when we make the attack, not just when we cast the spell like Spirit Shroud, which is some nice versatility. And yeah, if the enemy isn't immune or resistant to fire, totally make this fire damage too, so we can be a real Pyromancer, right? Oh, also, the ground within 15 feet is difficult terrain just for our enemies. So yeah, the spell is really just better in every way other than that it's an action to cast instead of a bonus action. But we're going to have ways to deal with that shortly. Because at level 8, with Conjure Minor Elementals secured, yes, I think it is time to take some sorcerer levels. Why is your bard suddenly a sorcerer? I can think of lots of good reasons. Perhaps as they've continued to delve deeper and deeper into their pet lore topic, they've uncovered something about themselves that they never knew. Perhaps their great-grandmother was the love child between an elf and a silver dragon in elven form, and this discovery is a catalyst that awakens an ancient draconic magic that's been lying dormant in your blood all this time. And yes, especially knowing I was going this route, eventually I was very tempted to start at level 1 as a sorcerer, as I've said, but that would have meant no magical discoveries by our first damage report, and it just kind of would have screwed that up massively. Or, sure, I guess we could have gotten our intelligence to 13 and started Artificer to not lose spell slot progression, pick up Constitution saving throw proficiency still, and armor and shield proficiency. That would have been super nice. But regardless, at this point, yes, we get so much from a few sorcerer levels. First off, we get innate sorcery, which says that twice per day we can use a bonus action to buff ourselves for 1 minute, causing all of our sorcerer spell attacks to be made with advantage, and the DC of our sorcerer spells to increase by 1. It's really nice, though we're not going to get a ton of use out of it just yet. We also get first level sorcerer spells, and for cantrips, just be sure and grab a good attack cantrip or two. Poison Spray does 2d12 damage as an attack right now, which is just slightly better than True Strike, as long as the enemy isn't resistant or immune to poison, right? So sure, feel free to grab True Strike as a sorcerer cantrip too, since we at least could get advantage on our sorcerer cantrip attacks via innate sorcery if we wanted to conserve our spell slots and just sling cantrips, right? And sure, Firebolt at least is kind of sticking with the theme here and is less likely to come up against enemy immunity anyways. But then there's some good defensive options here. Grab Mage Armor for a slightly better AC than Studded Leather if you don't have magical Studded Leather by now anyways. And of course the shield spell that I've been jonesing for since level 1. Plus, Absorb Elements is nice. Lots of good options. Again, consider Sleep and Hideous Laughter if you're going to be using innate sorcery so that you can have a better DC on those control spells, right? But then at level 9, we would be a sorcerer 2, and that means we get Font of Magic, our sorcery points. We get 1 point per sorcerer level, and we can use them to create more spell slots for ourselves or cannibalize our spell slots to create more sorcery points, which we might want to do because we can also immediately now use those sorcery points for meta magic. We get 2 meta magic options for now to enhance our spells in a variety of ways. And we are going to take Quicken Spell so that we can cast a spell that usually costs an action as a bonus action instead for 2 points, and Subtle Spell, which lets you cast a spell without any components for 1 sorcery point, meaning you could cast a spell now with your enemy having no way of knowing that you had done so until the spell took effect anyways, and this is important as we'll discuss in our next damage report, which is right now. Okay. Since last check, things have changed pretty significantly for us. First off, we've got Conjure Minor Elementals, which we can upcast at the 5th level if we wanted, thanks to multiclassing with 2 full casters, right? We've got a 5th level spell slot now. And doing so would cause all of our attacks to deal 3d8 extra damage. That's a lot. What's more, we could cast that spell with meta magic options. I think I'm going to assume that thanks to Subtle Spell and the 10-minute duration on Conjure Minor Elementals, we just have it active when combat begins. I appreciate that this won't always be the case. I put a poll out on my channel about a month ago asking people how often they knew combat was going to break out at their table within the next minute. About half of you said about half of the time, with other responses divided fairly evenly between rarely and usually. That said, a lot of the comments went something like, within 1 minute, rarely, but within 10 minutes, fairly often. And also, I saw a lot of comments that said, regardless, if I try to cast a buff spell before combat begins, it usually has the DM calling for initiative rolls, unless the spell was cast with Subtle Spell. Well, here we are. And yes, this is the reason I put the poll out in the first place. So while sure, even with Subtle Spell, there are going to be times that you get jumped by an enemy, or your ally goes Leroy Jenkins on you, or an NPC you thought was an ally turns out to be an enemy and attacks you, etc., etc. But I feel fairly confident that for most of us, most of the time, we'll be able to have this going when combat begins. And if not, it's not a huge setback, since we could at least use Quicken Spell on round 1 to get it going with the bonus action and still throw out a cantrip with our action, right? Anyways, assuming that it's already going, every round we're just going to quicken the best Scorching Ray that we can. That's a level 4 Scorching Ray on rounds 1, 2, and 3, and then a level 3 version on round 4, right? And then with our action, throw out, I'll assume Poison Spray, though again, if they're immune or resistant, True Strike will do almost the same amount of damage as would Firebolt. The question here is, should we use Innate Sorcery? I'm going to say not yet, but I'll get into the weeds on why in a minute. For now, then, we still don't have advantage on our attacks, which sucks, but we are hitting a heck of a lot harder regardless. So against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would be doing 126 damage per round on average now over a 4-round combat encounter, right? And against a 16 AC, it would be 94 DPR. Holy crap. Yeah, we broke 100 at level 9, and by a lot, at least against easy to hit targets. This is 4 times the damage since last check. That might be the single biggest increase from like one damage report to another from a percentage standpoint that I've ever seen on any build ever. I'm pretty sure it is. And it's only been 3 levels since our last check. I told you it would be worth the wait. And yeah, compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date at this level, we are beating everything by a mile. It's not even close. Check the spreadsheets that I link in the video description every week to see for yourself. But, I mean, yeah, tap those brakes, right? We are blowing a ton of resources to get here, almost all of our spell slots, because, yeah, we don't have the sorcery points to quicken and subtle spell all the time unless we can cannibalize lower level spell slots. So this is really unadvisable unless you feel confident that you're not having any more combat encounters today, or you just really need to pull out all the stops for whatever reason. After this fight, you're basically a True Strike and Inspiration bot until a long rest, which, I mean, hey, that's not a terrible thing to be as far as the rest of your party is concerned, but just know how much you're potentially going to be depleting yourself, right? Actually, you know what? I mean, we need 9 sorcery points to do all of this, right? We have 2, so we need 7 more. That's all of our first level spell slots and 2 of our second level spell slots. That would still leave us then with 2 third level spell slots because we used 1 for Scorching Ray and 1 second level spell slot. That's not bad, honestly. We can like slow or fear or hypnotic pattern, right? Throw out inspirations and just pepper enemies with True Strike or Poison Spray and consider ourselves to be making a massive contribution to a fight. Some might argue that doing that in combat would do more to help our party secure a victory than going the damage route. And frankly, they'd have a compelling argument. So yeah, sure, go ballistic like once a day, and otherwise be a freaking amazing support and control bard. I love that versatility. Okay, cool. Let's see how much further we can push this thing. At level 10, I want to get at least 1 more sorcerer level before anything, not because that gets us a sorcerer subclass as much as I appreciate it. Speaking of, I think for this build, I'd probably go with my old favorite here, Draconic Sorcerer, because they get some nice defensive buffs in the form of Draconic Resilience, 1 more hit point per sorcerer level, and what's basically a charisma-infused unarmored defense, right? Our AC would equal 10 plus our dexterity plus our charisma if we're unarmored, and that's better than anything worse than a +2 studded leather at the moment. And it'll go up again when we, gain charisma. That said, feel free to take a different subclass if you really want to. Honestly, anything will work fine. Maybe now is the time to try out that wild magic build you've been considering. But then we also get 2nd level sorcerer spells, and that means we can get, you guessed it, Scorching Ray. Oh man, not this again. So right, innate sorcery is awesome, but it only works for sorcerer spells, yeah? And as we went into at great length in the Catch-22 build from a few weeks ago, I think I'm out of cards, but the thumbnail looks like this. What is considered a sorcerer spell can be more complicated than you might think. Some might argue that thanks to the recent Sage Advice Compendium that Wizards of the Coast put out, since Scorching Ray is on the sorcerer spell list, it would work with innate sorcery, even though we learned and prepared it as a bard, right? But that same Sage Advice Compendium actually kind of proves otherwise in a different section. Let's read that for clarity. A wizard multiclasses into sorcerer with the wild magic sorcery subclass. Do spells cast from their spell book, aka wizard spells, right, trigger wild magic surge if they are on the sorcerer spell list, or do they have to gain them from sorcerer to trigger? From the multiclassing rules, each spell you prepare is associated with one of your classes. This rule means only the spells prepared as part of your sorcerer class features trigger wild magic surge. I think from this we can safely assume that since we prepared Scorching Ray as a bard spell, we couldn't use it for innate sorcery unless we learned Scorching Ray as a sorcerer spell, or we learned it in some way that didn't come from like a class spell list, right? And thus the necessity of learning Scorching Ray as a sorcerer spell, which we are doing right now. I guess I should mention that Draconic Sorcerers also get Alter Self, Chromatic Orb, Command, and Dragon's Breath for free here, which is a nice little list. Okay, at level 11, you might think, now we're going to pick up some Warlock levels so that we can Eldritch Blast as a cantrip and get more procs of Conjure Minor Elementals, right? At this level, level 11, right, Eldritch Blast would fire 3 times. That's amazing. But if you crunch the numbers, which I have,
unless the enemy has a study, he's a glipper, which I have.
There's 2 reasons why you realize that that's not actually as good an idea as you might think. First, since Eldritch Blast is not a sorcerer spell, it wouldn't benefit from innate sorcery, and thus you wouldn't have advantage on the attacks, like we would if we just cast a sorcerer cantrip instead, even if that cantrip only hits once. If there were a way to get Eldritch Blast without multiclassing into Warlock, we could make it work, I think. But in the 2024 rules, I mean, Spell Sniper has been changed, Magic Initiate has been changed, so I think we're out of luck. Correct me if you think I'm wrong. More importantly, though, since Warlock spell slots and other casters' spell slots don't stack for multiclassing what level are my spell slots purposes, going Warlock would slow down the scaling of our Conjure Minor Elementals damage, and at this point, that's the most important thing we can do for our damage. So while yes, Eldritch Blast would theoretically get us more CME procs off, the damage we're doing with all of our attacks would be less with a lower casting of Conjure Minor Elementals, and we would hit with those Eldritch Blasts a lot less often without having advantage on our attacks. So no, we're just skipping Warlock today. Alright, do we stay Sorcerer? Maybe. Some of you might think we should stay Sorc at least to level 4 to get that feat, but I really wanted to get to Bard 14 by the end of the build today, so I'm just going to go back to Bard here, making us a Bard 8. Meaning, hey, we get a feat anyways. And yes, of course, since we finally have reliable advantage now, I'm taking Elven Accuracy. This raises our Charisma for us by 1 to 19 and says that when we make Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma-based attacks and we have advantage, we can roll 3 d20s instead of 2, and now the difference between a non-advantage Eldritch Blast attacker versus a super advantage Poison Spray or Firebolt becomes even more pronounced, especially at higher enemy ACs. Now, some of you may think we'd be better off just bumping our Charisma to 20 here, but just for damage purposes, we get a much better bump to our hit chance with Elven Accuracy than we do with just a +1 to hit, assuming we've got innate sorcery going, of course. Alright, don't forget, we do get a 6th level spell slot here thanks to multiclassing purposes, and yeah, our cantrip die goes up by 1, whichever cantrip we're casting for damage. At level 12, we would be a Bard 9, and that means we get another round of expertise. Go ahead and PYF on the skills that you take there. And then we get 5th level spells, and we're a lore bard. We could take so many beautiful things. The world is our oyster. Wall of Force, Greater Restoration, Awaken, Dominate Person, Hold Monster, Synaptic Static. PYF, good luck. We could trade in Scorching Ray. We don't need that anymore, right? So yeah, I'd probably grab Wall of Force. At level 13, we would be a Bard 10, and that means we get Magical Secrets, which is, It's kind of crappy since we basically already have it, but do note, the Lore Bard's magical discoveries only gave us 2 spells from the extended list to choose from, right? Right now, we've got Conjure Minor Elementals and then probably Wall of Force. Magical Secrets improves things for us in that it says that any time our number of prepared spells increases, any of the new spells we choose can come from the extended list. And whenever we replace a bard spell, which we can do with 1 spell every time we gain a bard level, the replacement spell can come from the extended list too. So this does really blow the doors off of what's available to us now. Don't forget, our Bardic Inspiration goes up to a D10 now, which is great. And yes, we have a 7th level spell slot just in time for our next damage report. Since last check, things have changed a fair bit for us again. Now, on round 1, assuming that we've got Conjure Minor Elementals active when combat breaks out, at the 7th level, potentially, right, meaning 5d8 damage per hit, yowza. On round 1, we're using Innate Sorcery as a bonus action and then firing off a 6th level Scorching Ray, now with Super Elven Accuracy advantage. And yeah, it's totally worth sacrificing a little damage on round 1 to use your bonus action to get this going, no question. After that, we would be back to quickening Scorching Ray and then using our bonus action for like a Firebolt or other attack cantrip if need be. I'll assume Poison Spray because it's slightly better damage. But the Pyromaniac in me wants it to be Firebolt. And then 2 5th level Scorching Rays on rounds 2 and 3, and a 4th level Scorching Ray on round 4. So, averaged over 4 rounds against enemies with a 10 AC, we would do 238 damage per round, and against a 17, it would be only a little bit less, 229 DPR. And I mean, yeah, that's a big increase against easy to hit targets, but the real difference here comes at like middle enemy ACs and higher. Those numbers are almost triple since last check. Advantage is so good, and Elven Accuracy advantage is so good. This build is so good, especially for 1 combat encounter per day. And after that, it's still wonderful. I love it. Okay, let's see what we can do with the last few levels here. So at level 14, we would be a Bard 11. That means we get 6th level spells, and I mean, you could take Hero's Feast for one of the best party-wide buffs in the game, Mass Suggestion for one of the best like control spells in game. It doesn't even use concentration. Or, you know, take Contingency to help ensure that you have CME active regardless of whether you know combat is coming or not, right? It could only be a level 5 spell, but still, make the trigger like, when I'm surprised, cast Conjure Minor Elementals, and now you almost always will have the spell active on round 1, which is cool. At level 15, we would be a Bard 12, and that means we get another feat. And you know, especially with our charisma sitting at 19, I would probably go with Elemental Adept here. I didn't really set out to make a Pyromaniac when I started this build, but with Scorching Ray and considering that Conjure Minor Elemental's damage can be fire damage too, and you know, sure, we could be using Firebolt instead of Poison Spray. Yeah, I mean, this build has ended up becoming one heck of a pyro build if we wanted it to be, which is why I mentioned maybe going Fire Goliath as an elf alternative at the beginning, right? And the more we lean into fire, the more we're gonna want this feat, which would let us ignore fire resistance from enemies and bump our charisma to 20 finally, and let any 1s we roll for fire damage from spells to be considered 2s instead. It's not a huge bump, but we are rolling a boatload of dice, so it's something. It doesn't help us with fire immune enemies, but the truth is, the vast majority of our damage is coming from CME now, not Scorching Ray. So even if we miss out on the 2d6 of damage from Scorching Ray, we can change the damage type from Conjure Minor Elementals to something else every time we attack. So we can adapt that on the fly and only see a minor setback to our numbers even versus a fire immune enemy, right? Unless they're also immune to cold, acid, and lightning too, in which case we could try Spirit Shroud and just use radiant or necrotic damage for that, or, you know, maybe better just go into support mode and control mode, which is totally fine. Don't forget we get an 8th level spell slot at this level 2. At level 16, we would be a Bard 13, and that means we get 7th level spells, and again, I mean, Draconic Transformation, Force Cage, though it's a lot worse than it used to be, but Power Word Fortify is great, Reverse Gravity, simulacrum if you feel like being a cheater McCheater face. Says the guy using an upcast Conjure Minor Elemental spell. Hey, it's way more balanced than it used to be, okay? Anyways, the world is still your oyster, PYF. But then finally for us, at level 17, we would be a Bard 14, and that means we get, as a lore Bard, Peerless Skill, and this is like the main reason I wanted to stay in Bard, though the higher level spells should have been the main reason. But yeah, this lore Bard feature is amazing. It says that when we make an ability check or attack roll and fail, we can use our Bardic Inspiration to potentially turn that failure into a success. If we still fail, it doesn't even use the inspiration die. So basically it's like being able to use our Bardic Inspiration for ourselves, other than for our saving throws, right? But better, it doesn't cost our bonus action to inspire ourselves or anything, or even our reaction to use it here. There's no once per turn limit or anything. Now, this might be a little bit overkill when coupled with Elven Accuracy. We are rarely going to miss. Then again, we're level 17. Enemies have a pretty high AC at this point, and we're making a ton of attacks on our turn. So sure, it's not like everything is just always going to hit. Well, I mean, not until now, because getting to add a D10 to missed attacks up to 5 times per short rest turns our Scorching Ray into like a heat-seeking missile, and I love it a lot. We also get a 9th level spell slot for a ridiculous 7d8 of damage per hit on Conjure Minor Elementals if we were so foolish as to use our single 9th level spell slot to upcast it, but I don't know, maybe it's not so foolish on this build. And our cantrip gets its final bump here too to do 4 dice of damage. And so, for our final damage report, since last check, we have upped that CME damage to 7d8 per hit, potentially, gained higher level spell slots for Scorching Ray, increased our Poison Spray or Firebolt damage, right? Capped our Charisma, picked up a d10 increase to hit if we miss, 5 times per short rest at least, got a teeny bump from Elemental Adept, and picked up loads of just high level spell potential, which, I mean, it could mean control, it could mean support, utility. There is so much versatility and awesomeness here. But if we were going all out on damage, averaged over 4 rounds, against enemies with a 10 AC, we would do 391 damage per round. And against enemies with an 18 AC, it would be basically the same, 389 DPR. Flip table. I mean, jeez. This is more total damage than the strongest Nova build that I have done to date under the 2024 rules. And we're doing this every single round, for 4 rounds at least. It's more total damage than any sustained multi-target damage build I've ever done, including that Master Blaster build a few weeks ago. But this is all to a single target. Of course, no it's not. Because who's going to withstand almost 400 damage that you're dealing every round? And you can fire those Scorching Rays at other enemies if you want. And of course, it's just annihilating any other sustained single target damage build that I've ever done. 2014, 2024, supposedly overpowered third-party stuff, doesn't matter. Including builds that were using the older, more overpowered version of Conjure Minor Elementals like the 2024 Bladesinger build. So, okay. Deep breaths. Let's get into some final thoughts here. The tier score for this build, if you just take the damage that they do against all the enemy armor classes we calculate for at each of the 4 damage reports and just average it all into one big number, we end up with a 176. And that's like 75% higher than the next closest single target DPR build I've ever done, that Bladesinger. So, what does it all mean? Did we break the game? Right. So, a few things to keep in mind. First of all, yes, we are just, again, burning through resources as quickly as we're burning through enemies on the battlefield here. The easiest way to counter this kind of damage, more combat encounters per long rest, of course. But also, I mean, we've got, what, a +3 to our concentration checks? With advantage, sure, but it's not like we're guaranteed to succeed or anything. Not by a long shot. And then there's our armor class. We're sitting at a 17 as a Draconic Sorcerer by the end of the game, but before that we're, what, a 14 with non-magical studded leather anyways? With access to the shield spell, sure, after level 8, But even with that, we're getting hit a lot. And heck, we might not even have spell slots for shield if we're blowing everything for sorcery points, right? Plus, we need to be within 10 or 15 feet of our enemies to really take advantage of our damage buff. So yeah, this is really like the epitome of a glass cannon, right? Is Conjure Minor Elementals still broken? I actually don't think so. I really don't. Yeah, it adds a ton of damage per hit, for sure. But as a level 4 and 5 spell especially, it's not insane. And if you have to spend your action casting it on round 1, because you couldn't get it off, or you don't have sorcery points for subtle spell, etc., or even like with your bonus action with a quicken spell, it's gonna reduce your DPR by like almost 25% over a 4-round average. And again, as we built this character, holding on to concentration is far from a guarantee. So maybe you do start with a level in Artificer to help with that and with the AC problem, but doing so is going to slow down your damage, especially in the early game, which is probably a good thing on this build, right? And, speaking of the early game, remember, at that first damage report, our damage was not great. In fact, even calling it good might have been a stretch. At level 7, it gets a nice bump with Conjure Minor Elementals, but we don't really get fantastic until level 10 with Quicken Spell and Innate Sorcery and being able to upcast CME. And at that point, again, most of us are about to finish our campaign, if we didn't already finish by level 10. So it's not like we've made this invincible juggernaut of power here. We've made an incredibly squishy and vulnerable character who has the potential, if they can stay safe and stay alive and hold on to their concentration, to, level a whole horde of enemies in a spectacular barrage of heat-seeking nuclear missiles. Once they get to late tier 2 of play and beyond. Anyways, so when you can pull it off and hold on to your concentration and your life, boy, will you be devastating. Here's hoping you've got a great team that can help you stay on your feet. But yeah, the great news is that even if you lose concentration or run out of spell slots and sorcery points, you're still almost all Bard. You've got fantastic innate party buffs, enemy control options, heals, wonderful utility, and party face capability, right? I would hope that my DM would throw multiple encounters my way with this build. That way I could play my lute, sing some songs, inspire my allies, debuff and control my enemies, throw out some heals, but then once in a while, Dr. Jekyll takes hold. And when that happens, those enemies better run for cover, because you are going to leave nothing in your fiery wake but ash and ruin. So that's the build for the week. Whew. I hope you had fun with it. I was a little bit blown away by the result of it, but had a blast. Oh boy, too many puns. Putting it together, as I always do. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all that you do for me and for this channel. It means the world to me. It truly does. I hope that you will have a great day and a fantastic week. But if you don't, please hang in there. Don't give up. I believe in you. I hope that you will do good and be kind, and that I see you again really soon. But until then, take care. Bye. Here's to the writer without a word. Here's to the stone that's left unturned. Here's to the colors of the world. Did you know that mine's indigo? And did you know we're doing fine? And did you know still got time for us to go? There's a band called the Milltown Brothers. Their debut album came out early 90s, and they were largely unknown. They kind of had one hit, sort of, that I think made the charts, Which Way Should I Jump? But that song is their best song. And that is an undisputed fact. It's called Never Come Down Again. The reason that I'm thinking about them right now is because they just announced that they're coming out with a new album for the first time in over 30 years, I think, and I'm kind of excited about it. So check them out. Look up, just Google Milltown Brothers, Never Come Down Again, and listen to that song. I'm telling you, it's a banger. It's way good, especially the end with gorgeous. It's like a That's like a 2.5. Wow, Surefield grabbed it. So Surefield over.